Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. I'm Ollie Rodker. I work with the Land Workers Alliance in the UK, Union of Farmers and Foresters. I'll be chairing the session. We've got three brilliant speakers with us this morning who are all leaders in the climate and food justice movement. Dee Woods, who's the Food Justice Policy Coordinator with the Land Workers Alliance. Ros Corbett, who is the convener of the Peasant and Land Workers Assembly at COP26 in November in Glasgow, and Paula Gioia from the European coordination of Via Campesina, and who is also the facilitator of the IPC, which is the planning committee for food sovereignty. And they'll explain a bit more about their work and what they're doing in their presentations. We've also got assistance here from Catherine from the Land Workers Alliance, and Catherine will be helping run the session with me. And Brittany and Helena are our brilliant volunteers from ORFC helping us this morning. You probably have seen, but just a reminder that this session is being recorded, so you can look back on it afterwards on the YouTube ORFC channel for anything that you want to check back on. Or to go over it again, but not the breakout rooms which we'll be going into later. That bit doesn't get recorded. There's also a community forum on the Hoover platform if people want to take this conversation forward, or you can obviously use the chat box to make suggestions or to try and make connections with people for after this session. The format of this morning will be following my introduction now. We're going to have the three speakers, going to speak for about 10 minutes each. There's going to be a couple of short videos included in their presentations. We'll then have around 10 minutes for questions and answers after those presentations. And then we're going to split into two different breakout rooms. One will look at the Nyaleni mobilization, and one will look at the climate movement in the UK and how we can go forward. We'll come back from those breakout rooms after about 20 minutes for just around 15 or 20 minutes at the end to hear back from those rooms and to finish off. Hopefully that's all clear and everyone's raring to go. So I will hand over to Dee Woods, who's going to get us started. Thanks, Dee.
Good morning, everyone. So as Ollie said, I am the Food Justice Policy Coordinator of the Land Workers Alliance, and part of my role has been to follow international food governance in terms of its impact on UK food governance itself. And in the UK, we've had sort of a really perfect storm of Brexit, of national food strategy, and the agriculture bill, trade bill, and the UN Food System Summit. So Land Workers Alliance are a member of Via Campesina, and we are part of the response by hundreds of civil society organizations around the world who didn't agree with the UN Food System Summit. And just to catch people up, if people don't know about the UN Food System Summit, it came about in 2019. It came from, not from the Committee on World Food Security, but it came from the outgoing General Secretary. And this was sort of centered around the corporate influence that is happening within international global food governance. So this was your philanthrocapitalists like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the World Trade Organization and other big organizations coming together to develop this food system summit, which excluded sort of the, sorry, I've had a nosebleed this morning, so I'm a bit dizzy. But it excluded people, it excluded the sort of really intersectional route that was developed after 2008, which meant that everyone had a voice. So multi-stakeholderism was one of the main things that was said about it. They said this would be inclusive when it wasn't, because it didn't center people. It didn't center the people who were most impacted. And the summit was not grounded in human and people's rights. Instead, it was grounded in what they termed game-changing solutions. In other words, game-changing solutions that would be led by business and the big corporations in terms of developing full solutions for our food system. So what we've seen with the UN Food System Summit is that this is making way for what we're calling the fourth industrial revolution, paving way for a new green revolution, using digital transformation, using data, using all these full solutions, science-based, but not people-based, not people-centered. So last year, academics, NGOs, Via Campesina, other farming organizations, all voice their opinions. The three sort of raptors on the right to food also voice, their concerns, including going in and trying to see if they could change this. And in the end, they all stepped back out because this process wasn't a legitimate process for people. In the UK, we held our People's Food Summit, and we have a session this afternoon which will look at the UK more in depth and what we're doing here in the UK. Internationally, there was a very successful counter summit that was held over several days to counter the People's Summit, but generally it isn't good for our food sovereignty movement. It isn't good for general food governance, and we're going to move on to how this intersects with other things that are happening at the UN, including COP26, and how food and farming didn't really factor within it. It wasn't high on the agenda, right? But also the pandemic and how that didn't really figure either within all this. Instead, there was this drive to have these game-changing solutions with these action tracks. So I'm going to hand you over to Roz, who's going to give you some more detail around COP26. And we'll put into the chat links to various documents that you can read about, you know, the counter summit, the problem analysis, and other information. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dee, for giving that overview of the work that you were doing and continue to do with the Food System Summit. And hello, everyone. I'm Ros Corbett. I'm a market gardener and beekeeper, and I'm on the coordinating group of the Land Workers Alliance. And last year, for the 2 years before that, I was coordinating the Land Workers Alliance presence at COP26, which was the UN climate talks that happened in Glasgow back in November last year. And I'm just going to talk today about some of the sort of corporate capture of the UN COP climate talks and how we saw that manifesting itself in different ways, and how that impacted on some of the decisions and proposals that came out of COP in terms of agriculture, and then sort of pose a bit of a tricky question about whether we should still be engaging in COP, what's the purpose of that space. So I'm going to start some slides. I hope they work. Always get nervous with the tech in these things. So I'm talking about COP as an example of the corporatization of global governance spaces. So for those of you that don't know, and just to be clear, the UN COP is the annual climate talks that are convened by the United Nations. And it's a place where states come together to negotiate and cooperate to tackle the climate crisis. And so states are the primary actor, with the UN sort of providing the secretariat for the negotiations, or supposedly. It's the biggest UN conference of its kind, with over 250,000 people attending each year. And I think in Glasgow there was 30,000 people attending. And other than state representatives and negotiators, there are other organisations that are allowed to attend as observers, and LWA and other members of Via Campesina attended as observers. You have to apply for observer badges to attend. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the sort of the role of observers and the relationship that they have with states in a little bit. So one of the ways that we see sort of corporate involvement in the COP space is firstly through the sponsorship of the whole conference. So obviously it's a really big conference. It's really huge, involves a lot of additional infrastructure. And because of that, corporations are given the opportunity to sponsor the conference, to pay for some of that. And this gives them sort of credibility in terms of their claims for how they're tackling the climate crisis, and giving them an opportunity to sort of promote their systems. And interestingly, this last year at COP26, the UN government made the decision to only allow sponsors who had made a clear strategy towards achieving net zero. So that kind of ruled out a lot of the previous sponsors from oil companies. But we do still see a lot of companies who have questionable sort of climate ambitions. And obviously net zero in itself is a sort of problematic approach to reducing climate emissions. So I'm just going to point out two of the sponsors in there who have direct impact on the food system. One is Unilever, who I was researching last night, produces enough plastic to cover 2 football pitches each day, and has also in the past been involved in palm oil production, which has been linked to rainforest destruction and human rights abuses. And Sainsbury's as well, which is obviously a big UK supermarket company, and has a lot of control in terms of the food system in the UK. Also rated as the worst supermarket for reducing packaging by Greenpeace in 2019, and has a lot of control over our food system and in the way that that operates. So there's already this sort of like influence and validity given to corporations in the conference. I also wanted to talk a little bit about how we see corporate interests becoming part of state interests in the COP. And I picked up this article from the Food Research Collaboration that came out just after COP, where they had analysed the attendees of state, official attendees of states, and checked whether they were actual government officials and civil servants or whether they were coming from other organizations. And they found that in a lot of instances, state delegates who have preferential access to some of the negotiations and spaces in the COP were actually representatives of major food corporations. So Brazil's delegation had quite a number of different corporate actors coming in as state representatives. Ghana's delegation including 2 representatives of the Global Shear Alliance and a representative of Cocoa Life, which is a confectionery multinational. Malaysia's delegation included the European Regional Manager of Malaysian Palm Oil Board, and Russia's delegation included a representative from the Russian National Dairy Producers Union. Now I guess it's okay for these people to be attending this conference as observers, but it becomes deeply problematic when they're allowed to attend as state observers. And we have to really watch out for that. And what we see as a result in the spaces at COP is this rise of multi-stakeholderism, where all stakeholders are sort of given equal access to the space, or even preferential access if you have the money. And this sort of multi-stakeholderism is a term that we use where it brings together all those who have a stake in solving a problem, which on the face of it sounds fine, but it actually masks a lot of problems to do with power relationships, because everyone's just assumed to be sort of equal in these multi-stakeholderism spaces. And it also masks a lot of processes with accountability. So really the UN Climate Change Conference should be, states should be the primary actors, and that's because states should have clear accountability and democratic processes that allow citizens to sort of lobby and campaign for the positions that those states take. But that doesn't really happen with multi-stakeholderism because other people are allowed to have sort of equal power. And as a result, we see these sort of agreements and pledges that come out of COP that are really corporate focused. So this one example that came out of COP as an initiative for agriculture was the Aim for Sea initiative. This is a $4 billion initiative created by the United States, United Arab Emirates, and other fossil fuel corporations and agrochemical corporations. And it aims to fast track private investment into technological breakthroughs for climate smart agriculture. And climate smart agriculture is a kind of problematic term for LWA and Via Campesina, because it really assumes that technological innovation is the only way forward and doesn't really give a place for Indigenous people's knowledge, small scale farmers' knowledge, and all of the practices that we have around agroecology and food sovereignty. So this raises the question, is COP doomed to fail if corporate interests are having such a strong hold over the conference? And should we engage, or should we, like with the UN Food Systems Summit, withdraw and say we're not attending, we don't believe in this process anymore? I think we should still, because it has this structures in place that should place states first, and also have observers that can come in and act for scrutiny, to push for transparency in the decisions that happen, to channel public pressure, and to maintain a strong civil society presence. And we did see quite a lot of that happening at the COP in Glasgow. So we had presentations in the main plenary spaces with Indigenous leaders from around the world, and some actions from campaigners and activists to sort of call out the polluters that were there and the corporate interests that were lobbying. So yeah, there is still an important role to play, I think, for civil society, and to still push for centering people who are most impacted within the actual conference. But it's hard. It's very tiring. I think everyone that was there was very tired at the end of it and disappointed. And it requires a lot of coordination across global networks of activists. And that's why I think Via Campesina plays a really important role in COP in terms of the coordination of different Via Campesina members globally. And yeah, we need the grassroots to really help us with the kind of mobilizing and the sense of solidarity and energy that comes from all of the grassroots mobilizing. So it's really important to have all of the sort of counter summit actions that are happening at COP while the conference is happening. So that's maybe a question we can discuss a bit further. Is COP doomed to fail in the breakout rooms later? I'm going to stop there, and I wanted to show a video really briefly that we've made. Oh no, scary tech, that we made following COP. So I'm just going to start sharing that video now. Here we go. Share. Okay. There we go.
Globalized struggle, globalized hope.
Yeah, hello guys. I'm Paula Gioia.
My name is Jesus Vasquez, and I am from Puerto Rico, Boriquen. So we're part of the Caribbean region and Latin America.
My name is Jyoti Fernandez. I'm a farmer in Dorset, and I do policy work for the Land Workers Alliance, which is a union of farmers, foresters, and land-based workers.
My name is Dee Woods. I am the Food Justice Policy Coordinator and Director of the Land Workers Alliance.
I've been involved in farmers' constituency that's supposed to be representing all farmers on the planet as part of civil society, as part of the observers that are looking at COP and trying to find out what's happening in the negotiations so that we can be a part of the climate negotiations. Participating in a climate change conference of the United Nations has kind of multiple layers. First, I would like to say that we don't have a lot of hope with the negotiations that are happening inside. And that's kind of sad to say, but it's kind of a realistic approach and also a shared analysis between our grassroots organizations and movements. Come here first to show solidarity with our comrades at the local level, and also to express our vulnerability because we live in the global south. We are an island nation, and we're especially vulnerable to climate change. We are experimenting the rising of the sea level. We are experimenting higher amounts of droughts and tropical storms and hurricanes.
I came because I can see the effect the climate crisis is having on my farm and for farmers in Canada. And it's hard to imagine how it can get much worse and how we'll be able to grow food in that climate.
I'm speaking on behalf of millions and millions of farmers around the world that are on the very front line of climate change. We're severely impacted by the changes in weather conditions. You know, there's droughts, there's floods, there's all sorts of seasonal changes that are really impacting our ability to produce the world's food supply.
There were several occasions where we would have liked to speak and we were not able to speak. No, or where our delegates have been even removed from the room?
So my personal experience has not been a very good one. For me, it sums up the entire COP, where people have been denied access, had their voices silenced, and basically been threatened or bullied. The solutions that are being offered are not real solutions.
But it feels good to be in solidarity with local folks, and we had a big march recently where thousands of people were out from all over the world. It was raining, and people stick up for it until the end. And those are spaces where you see, indigenous comrades, you see farmers, you see activists and organizers from around the world. And it's also a necessity, especially after, the pandemic context with COVID-19, where as an international movement, we haven't had a chance to be physically with each other.
It also feeds us, it nourishes us, and gives strength, it gives power for us to keep our struggle on the ground, to keep our struggle in space like this.
The action that we're going to see is going to come out of the relationships we build here in the Via Campesina versus the actual halls of the COP itself.
A huge, amazing movement of people here from all walks of life, from all continents, a real web of humanity.
I'm going away knowing that the real work lies in the grassroots, that we have to be movement building, we have to be building solidarity, and we just need to get to a critical mass to effect change from the bottom up. It definitely will not come from the top.
Globalized struggle, globalized hope.
Okay, hope you all enjoyed that film and recognise some faces in there. I'm going to pass it on to Paula Gioia now, who is going to talk a little bit more about Neolini and the work for that coming forward.
Yeah, hello guys, can you see my presentation? Please give me a feedback. You can?
Yes, it's great. Yep.
Okay, cool. Good, thank you. Yeah, thanks for inviting us to be with you here today and giving us the opportunity also to present one, let's say, way of organizing from the grassroots, because as we just saw in the video, the last words of the solutions will not come from the top. No, the real work lies on the grassroots, and therefore, in face of this very harmful scenario that we are experience in the world today, what I want to present to you now is a proposal, a call for organizing of the grassroots of social movements, the civil society, broader, towards the real transformations that we need in our food systems and that we need also more broad in the world today. So I want to present to you the Nileni global process, which will culminate with a global forum in the first half of next year, a forum for food sovereignty, and this is being led by the IPC, which is the International Planning Committee for Food Sovereignty, to which La Via Campesina is one very active actor. So just very shortly to introduce you, the IPC, the IPC is a self-organized platform gathering social movements, especially from the food producing sectors, peasants, fishers, pastoralists, indigenous peoples, but also having consumers organizations, urban poor, and also NGOs which also deeply connect to the food sovereignty agenda and values. The IPC was created in the early 2000s, some years after La Via Campesina brought to the world the concept and the vision of food sovereignty. And from there on, quite a lot of, an alliance was formed, and the culmination of it was the IPC. And the IPC played a very, very important role over the past 20 years, let's say. On one hand, further developing the concept of food sovereignty. 2007, the IPC organized a very important, a landmark forum, the Nileni Forum 2007, and in which we produced a declaration which is until today used as a reference document for regarding food sovereignty. This document has been referred in several policy documents, in several instruments, in national legislations, and so on. The IPC also sorry, before I go there, and this forum, the 2007 was this landmark, and then later on, the IPC also organized, again, in Mali. Both forums took place in Mali. The next one was 2015, a forum on agroecology, in which also from a grassroots perspective, agroecology has been also defined, so not from a, let's say, institutional or scientist perspective, but really from a perspective from the peoples, from the grassroots. And over this 20 years, more or less, the IPC had several achievements. And first, of course, creating this big movement for food sovereignty, and together struggling for change. We had several achievements at institutional level, anchoring food sovereignty in different instruments, as I already said, but also, for example, actively influencing the reform of the Committee on World Food Security, allowing that after the food crisis, at that moment, finally, the ones who are really in the center of the food system would have a voice in this kind of decision-making spaces. Other instruments have been developed, and this articulation within the IPC, for example, towards the achievement of the adoption of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Peasants and Other People Working in Rural Areas was also very, very important. This articulation across food producer sectors and really finally recognizing our human rights. So the IPC is definitely a very important platform for us in Via Campesina and beyond. And we have been analyzing, as Dee and Ross just explained, what is going on at at institutional level nowadays, that we really need, to come together again and to refresh, let's say, our strategies, in face of the current threats and challenges ahead. Really tackling the overlapping crisis that we are facing, and looking for solutions that are not necessarily responding to institutional processes, but really creating an agenda which is autonomous, as well as the strategies. Of course, the COVID-19 pandemic has increased even more the inequalities that we have in our society today. It has made many of us even more vulnerable to food insecurity, and this has not been taken into account, as I think Dee already explained when speaking about the Food System Summit. But I would like to highlight that this analysis of the IPC about the need for a new space of convergence, a space of strategy development and so on, is not a response to neither to the UNFSS nor to the COVID-19 pandemic. This reflection goes back to 2019, where the IPC facilitators already came together and decided to launch this global process. Nevertheless, some months later, the COVID-19 pandemic had its outbreak. And obviously we had to slow down the process because our people had to face in first extent the challenges regarding survival in a pandemic context. But last year we were able to come back again and to reflect that we have now to push forward for this. We can no longer wait. The corporate sector is using the pandemic to reshape the governance space, for example. Inequalities are increasing, so we have to put all together the energies we have, maybe find new ways of strategizing and really make it happen. Therefore, we are calling for a new global response, a new process towards food sovereignty. I think a very important analysis that we came up with is the importance of intersectionality, that we have to be able to reach out to actors that are not yet fully participating in the food sovereignty movement. We have to reach out to climate justice movement. We have to reach out to labor movements, maybe also to health movement, anti-war movements, and to see from their perspectives, how can they also interact with the food sovereignty agenda. So we are convinced that 25 years after the creation of the concept of food sovereignty, it's now really the moment to relaunch a process to deepen and widen the principles and our concept of food sovereignty, and towards the needed transformations, towards this systemic change that is really urgent. For that, there will be a global process. I mean, there is already a global process ongoing. We are right now, this January, starting launching the regional processes. So the regional processes will feed in the global one. And also there will be a kind of dialogue between the different levels, let's say. And here, I think for that session, what's also important that is that also from a UK perspective, that you also are able to to analyze, to exchange, to come up with elements to feed into the regional process, which will after that go into the global process. In the second part of the session, during the breakout room, we are going to start brainstorming about this from a UK perspective. Here in Europe, the regional branch of the IPC is called Nileni ICA, which stands for the Nileni Europe and Central Asia Food Sovereignty Network. And this is the structure that will be facilitating the regional consultations, exchanges, and meetings. And here we are also looking for further, collaboration with new social movements, new NGOs, and also scholars who are, who also are willing to strategize towards the systemic change from a food sovereignty perspective. And for that, and facilitating all this, the Via Campesina Europe, ECVC, held the secretariat of Nileni ICA, and here you see our contact where you can reach out to us in case you are willing to further engage at a regional level. And to finalize, I would like just to screen the mobilization video of this process, and I hope it is inspiring also for UK folks to get engaged in that. Thank you. You can screen the video, Brittany.
Catherine, are you going to take us through a few minutes of questions?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much to our speakers. So now we are moving on to the audience participation section of this session. And so we have a 10 minutes space for any questions, clarifications you may have for our speakers. I'm just going to post again the Google document for those. We have one question at the moment from Nora McCann, who asks whether these slides and videos will be shared after this event. I suppose they'll be recorded. This session will be, yes, this session will be recorded afterwards, so this will be put online shortly after. We also have another question, which is on, has the corporatization of these global governance spaces, has that become more pronounced and worse in recent years, or has it always been like this? Would any of you like to take that?
I'm not an official speaker, but I'll throw something in there because I went to a COP way back in 2000 in The Hague. I guess it was COP 5 or 6, and it was in fact I was thrown out of that COP, the official process, because it was clear then that it was already very much full of state and corporate actors, and it was not at all influenced by people from the grassroots. I think it's actually improved a lot since then. I mean, it's a far bigger event and there's far more people taking part, so there's a lot more room for people from all sorts of movements to attend. Having said that, the narrative and the way that the dynamic is controlled and the things that the speakers talked about in terms of sort of masking what's really going on is more sophisticated and is more problematic. So I think it's definitely always been there, but it's developing as more pressure is put on the process. I don't know if anybody else wants to add to that.
Maybe I can just, I mean, I haven't been so deeply involved in the Committee of World's Food Security in the past, no, but, you know, we hear the experience from our past comrades, no, and as I think Dee also shortly spoke about that, and I presented, no, that in 2009 there was you know, a momentum also for social movements to be heard. No, we have been able to, you know, deeply coin also the reform of the Committee on World Food Security, you know, bringing our voice there. But I mean, it's not only us, no, also the private sector is there, also the philanthropists are there, no, the scientists are there. So it's not that only us are there, no, and depending on the momentum and which also how the geopolitics looks like, no, which are the governments that are stronger and so on, this how to say, this power relations change. And I have the impression that, you know, maybe the 10 first years of, you know, the reformed CFS was much more, you know, much more friendly, no, for our visions. No, we achieved several different, you know, policy documents that reflect our needs and our proposals, no, but that in the last period, maybe the last 5 years, this space is getting more and more harmful, no, where for example, the World Economic Forum, where the Gate foundations and so on, they are getting more and more influence, no, and this is going much beyond beyond the CFS, no, the United Nations Food System Summit is a clear example where, you know, food is taking out from there and making the links to New York and so on, where this private actors are much more strong. So I have the impression, no, that this is a phenomenon that you have been seeing increasing over the past years, no.
I can't really comment historically because in terms of COP, I was only attending at Madrid and Glasgow. Madrid was the one just before Glasgow. And but that's interesting what you say, Ollie, about that you feel like it's not changed so much, that there has always been corporate actors, but with a lot of power there, but that there is like civil society engaging in that, and that seems to have improved in some ways. I think definitely in Glasgow it was a huge challenge for people from the global south to attend because of COVID-19, and also it being in the UK and our current government having a sort of racist visa policies and border control policies. That really restricted a lot of global South people, and that did feel different from Madrid, and that did sort of change the dynamics as well of the alternative spaces that we had and the kind of intersectionality of discussions that happened there. But that's that's about kind of where it was hosted and the current situation with COVID. But I think also what we've seen over the last years is that corporations are adopting the language of civil society in a lot of ways to kind of co-opt it. And it's interesting thinking about what that means, whether they're sort of afraid or trying to get legitimacy for what they're saying, because they do recognize that there is like legitimacy in the civil society demands. And I think it's really important that we're aware of that and look at terms like nature-based solutions or climate smart agriculture and how they're being used by corporations to sort of mask, to sound good and use the language of food sovereignty movement and other movements to kind of mask what is basically business as usual. And I don't know if that's changed over the last 20 years or so with COP, but I kind of noticed that quite a bit.
Okay, I'm seeing quite a few questions being put in the document now, and I think some of these would be better to discuss in the breakout rooms. But I will just ask one more before we go in, and it's has there been more success in dealing individually with policymakers rather than via these UN conferences?
I can take. I mean, I think to deal individually, I mean, bilaterally and so on, this is a condition for any kind of engagement at United Nations spaces, no? Because if you don't do your work at home, no, it's not the diplomatic representing a state in a conference that normally has, you know, the final word. They receive so many instructions from the capitals, no, that, you know, really if you want really to achieve results in your, you know, work, you have to do the work at home first, no? So that's my experience, being it in Rome, being it in Geneva or whatever, no, depending on the process you are engaging in. If, you know, if you only have bilateral exchange with the representatives of the government in these United Nations agencies, you are not going to be successful. So you have to have this dialogue also at home, because they are the ones giving the instructions to their diplomatics in the agencies, no? And here, of course, depending on the relations that you have, no, with them at home, it can be more successful or not, but they are definitely much more close to the reality, at least at home.
Great, thank you very much, Paula. Okay, now I suggest that we move on to our next phase of the session. And we're going to split up into two breakout rooms. One of these breakout rooms, facilitated by Paula and Dee, is going to be looking at how we can engage with the international processes, like the specifically the LA Forum, and how we can prepare to get, you know, for our intervention in that from the UK. And the second breakout room will be looking at UK climate mobilisations and how we can keep up the momentum in the UK following the COP26 session, and that will be facilitated by Ros and myself. So you can choose which breakout room you go in, and that option will be appearing very soon, hopefully. Excellent. So let's go. I'll see you all in a bit. And in about so these breakout rooms will close in about 20 minutes time, and then we'll have some time at the end to feedback from these sessions to the main room. So see you all in a bit. Thanks.
Okay.
I'm sorry, was that Nicola? I'm sorry for that.
It's okay. I can finish. I know we're sort of running out of time.
Maybe you can write the end of your statement in the chat.
Yeah, just to acknowledge that there are people like myself who are advocates for intersectional sort of food justice issues, but we don't often get recognised because we're in a different part of Britain where there's not that much going on. There might be a food group that is set up here. It's a well-known one, which we're not going to mention, but the social justice side of their operations can learn from other groups in the UK. So just be aware that even just in the UK, we need to be collaborating more with existing really good intersectional food justice groups.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Nicola. So yeah, I think we're all back in the original main room, as it were. Hopefully nobody's been left behind in a breakout room. I thought it'd just be better that we come back here in case anybody looks in at the end, or there was somebody, a couple of people sort of left in here, as it were. So yeah, we sort of had to change the format a bit because of there was only the one breakout room, and I mean we have got till past. So I don't, if there's anyone else who wants to make a couple of comments before we could finish with if any of the speakers want to say anything. Dee, I don't know if you want to finish up. I think clearly, like, this is a huge conversation, and it's great to hear about this Nyaleni process, because I think that's clearly one of the things that needs to happen now that there is so much more connection between some of these groups, and a lot of people are looking at the same problems and towards the same solutions. We need to do what people have just previously said, strengthen and deepen these relationships, and it's great to have a structure or a framework that we can do that in. And maybe if people here want to put their contact in a chat box or use the Hoover Community Forum, if people want to stay involved a bit. Paula's slide had a contact at the end of it in Paula's presentation. Just as if people here are interested in this and want to be more involved, there's a huge amount of work to do, and I guess, you know, people need to step forward to do it. So please feel free to use that chat box now or contact people individually. I'll leave a couple of minutes space for if anybody else wants to have some sort of final thoughts about way forward, and then maybe Dee, I don't know if you want to finish up just to sort of a couple of minutes before 12:30.
Yeah, I think it would be good to sort of tease out how the climate justice movement, and probably, you know, how we continue with sort of that COP mobilization, how that would intersect with the Nyaleni process. So Roz, I don't know if you had any thoughts.
Yeah, I know. Well, I know from the COP26 coalition, which was a big civil society coalition that did a lot of the organising ahead of COP. There is some follow-up work that they're doing, and it's why I kind of picked up a bit on the point about trade unions, because there was quite a strong trade union working group that was established from that is continuing to meet now to kind of debate and have discussions around some of the tricky elements of just transition and what that means for workers. So that's ongoing work, and if people are interested in joining that, I'll try and find the link quickly. And there were also local groups that were set up with the COP26 coalition, and some of those are continuing to organise and think about renaming themselves to something not COP26. But that was really nice to see local groups coming about. And yeah, a lot of people also needed a break. So I think there will be more coming out of it that is sort of stewing away in rest time. But yeah, I think for the Land Workers Alliance, there was a lot that we learnt from it as well, and we'll be integrating into some of our campaigns work as we go forward. So yeah, if people have ideas and suggestions too, really keen to hear them. I'm just going to stop speaking and try and find the information about the trade union stuff for people.
Kemi.
Yes, I was going to say that, you know, this whole issue and all the movement that we're pursuing, if we're able to catch young people early, it makes life much easier later on. And I think we need to be connecting with the people who influence the curriculum and make decisions and policies in schools, so that children begin to be aware of many of these issues that we are discussing and tackling. So I put on the chat before in the breakout room that we should be reaching out to the likes of the National Governors Association, the likes of National Association of Head Teachers, so that we can sensitize them to what is going on. We know that many of them will probably be involved at individual levels at different things, but actually formally reaching out to those kind of organizations and having a platform with them, I think would, you know, make a lot of difference to what goes on in schools.
Thank you, Helena.
Just to say that I was in another event yesterday where there was a lot of talk about offsets and how the government is going to run agriculture now through offering money for offsetting, carbon offsetting. And there was a big discussion about whether people were going to go along with this or oppose it. And from an international perspective, I think it's crucial to oppose it. With indigenous people's land being turned into gigantic carbon sinks, possibly they might be in control of it in some places, but I think that this whole sort of carbon commodification process, and I do think we have to be aware of it, and that is definitely going on all over the place. Thanks.
Okay, Ruth.
Hi. Yeah, thanks for a really interesting session. I really appreciate that everyone's kind of completely exhausted after COP26, but I also think that COP27 is coming up pretty quickly, and it's already been touted as being the food COP, or in some circles. So I think it would be really great to try to get together and start organising soon, as soon as people have the energy for it, to think about how we can get food sovereignty, or get, you know, what our concerns into that discussion, and whether, given that we're in the UK, whether we've got any leverage points or mechanisms for influencing how the UK government kind of manages the remainder of its time as in the presidency in the run up to COP27.
Yeah, it's a complex question, how to have leverage on the current government. I mean, COP27's in Egypt, I think, isn't it? You know, and what the right approach will be for us to take towards that. Okay, it's certainly too much to deal with just here, but hopefully we can, everybody's involved in organisations and ways that we can continue this conversation. Dee, do you mind if we finish with you? Have you got anything further to add? We can just all wave goodbye.
Yeah, so we have a UK specific session at 4 to 5, where hopefully we could sort of expand on building some of these strategies, and we'll be providing sort of updates on the food sovereignty movement here, where we're at, and sort of really take on board, Nicola, your issue about sort of food justice issues and things really being sort of southeast focused and London focused, and hopefully that's something we can change as we sort of build towards this regional process, which includes having a national gathering in September. So.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Dee. So maybe see some of you this afternoon at that session. And otherwise, thank you very much for coming, and hope you have a great rest of the day, whatever you're attending. And hopefully see some of you on the streets as well. Thank you very much. We'll say goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.